Hi there folks, welcome back to Bringing More to the Table with Shelley. Today I'm going to be making a delicious sour cream coffee cake. So let's get started and I'll get you going on the ingredients. So today we have 3/4 of a cup of salted butter at room temperature, 3 large eggs at room temperature, 1½ teaspoons of vanilla, 1½ cups of white granulated sugar, 1½ cups of sour cream. This is full fat sour cream. And for the flour, it's 3 cups of flour, 1½ teaspoons of baking soda, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, 3/4 teaspoons of salt. And then for the streusel filling, it's 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1/2 cup of finely chopped nuts, I'm using pecans, and 1½ teaspoons of cinnamon. So let's get started by getting everything into the mixer. And once again, if you don't have a mixer, you can use a hand mixer. Works just as well. All right, so I'm going to start by getting the butter into the mixing bowl. And I'm going to put this on to mix so it can mix the butter and soften it a little bit before I add the sugar and the eggs and vanilla. So just right in there. And as I said, this is room temperature softened butter. Now, when you're making this cake, it is a very large cake, so you can make it in a bundt pan, or I'm going to use a loaf pan today, and I'm going to also try and make some cupcakes out of it. But for the cake mix itself, you can do it in a bundt pan or whatever you have available, and it is a large cake, so make sure you do use a large enough pan so it doesn't overflow in your oven. All right, so let's get started here with the butter. Get this on to a mix. I'll turn it up so it whips it fast. I'm just going to take it off the paddle because butter always seems to stick to the paddle. And then we can add in the sugar. And this is a nice recipe. The cake is really nice, has a nice texture, a good crumb on it. It's quite moist. So it's good if you want to have for coffee, dessert, whatever, afternoon tea, visitors. I'm going to take my 1½ cups of sugar and give that a quick little turn up. Doesn't have to be perfect. The sugar is going to mix in with the butter, so it'll be fine. So just pour your sugar right into the bowl. Set that aside over there. Turn this back on. Not on fast speed when you're in the beginning, because you don't want it to fly everywhere. Now give that a little time to mix. Probably with the stand mixer, it probably needs 30 seconds to about a minute. If you're using a hand mixer, you do need to mix it a little bit longer because it doesn't have the power that the stand mixer does. Okay, so that's going pretty good. I'm going to add in my eggs and vanilla. I just want to get the big chunks out of there. I'm just going to stop this and I'm going to scrape down my sides and my paddle. Want everything to be mixed well. And then this cake is going to bake in your oven at 350 degrees for approximately an hour. You're going to have to check it depending which pan size you use. If you use the bundt pan, it will take an hour. If you use a loaf pan or cupcake tin, it's going to take a little bit less time. So you will have to check that as you go. I would say probably about 45 minutes in those other pans. So 3 large eggs, going to go in here all at once. And just drop those in there like that. And 1½ teaspoons of vanilla. All right, turn that back on so it can get all mixed in and incorporated together. Turn that on. And then we're going to add in our sour cream and our flour in alternate mixtures. So a little bit of flour, then some sour cream, and then so on. So I'm just going to let this mix. I'm going to take my salt, put it into my flour, my baking powder, 1½ teaspoons, and 1½ teaspoons baking soda. I'm just going to give that a little whisk so it just mixes in with our flour. And this is the nice thing about having a stand mixer, is you can let that mix and you can do something else at the same time because your hands are free. Alright, so that's pretty good. Alright, let's see how we're doing over here. Okay, so this has come together quite nicely. I'll just stop this so you can have a see. So it's just a regular batter, that's all. So it's flour, or not flour, sorry, sugar, eggs, and butter and vanilla in this right now. So now I'm going to add in half of my flour, and then I'll add in some of my sour cream. Just put that in like so. And this is 3 cups of flour. All right, let's turn that back on. Low speed to begin. So that's mixing in quite nicely. And then I'm going to add in some of the sour cream, just an alternate. So let me get this finished, and then I'll be back once we're getting it into the pan. But first I'll get some sour cream in there so you can see how it looks. So as I said, this is 1½ cups of sour cream. Now I've pre-measured all my ingredients out in the bowls just so it's a little bit easier, but you don't have to do that. You can just do it right as you go. That. I'll just set that aside right there. Turn this back on. And mix this at about a medium speed, just so it gets nicely incorporated and all the ingredients get put together. So that's looking real good. So I'm going to take my flour again, and I'm going to add another addition of flour to this. Now I do like to stop my mixer so that the flour doesn't go all over the place. So I'll do 3 additions, and then that way everything will get mixed in quite nicely. So I'll see you in a second. Okay folks, so my batter is done, and I'll show you the consistency. It's quite thick, so like I say, just be careful when you're making this cake, because if you don't use a big enough pan, it will overflow in your oven. And yeah, so we're going to get started here again, going into the loaf pan, and I'm going to do 1 loaf pan, and I'm going to try and get 12 cupcakes out of this recipe instead of 1 big bundt pan recipe, or cake, I should say. So as I said, it's quite thick, so just spoons or spatula, whatever you have, into your pan. And then once we get some of this in the pan, we're going to put some of that streusel in here, and then more cake on top, more cake batter. So you want maybe about 1 cup of this batter in the bottom, and just spread it around. As I said, it's quite thick, and I did flour and butter my pan so this does not stick. So that's what I'm going to do there. And then I'm just going to take some of my streusel topping here, and as I said, this is ½ cup of brown sugar, ½ cup of pecans finely chopped, and 1½ teaspoons of cinnamon. So just take some of that streusel and sprinkle it on top of the cake, just like that. And then we're going to put some more batter on top of this. And same thing we're going to do for the cupcakes. We'll be spooning the cupcakes into their liners, and I'll put some batter into the cupcake liner, and then some streusel, and then some more batter on top of that. And you want to fill this pan probably about half. So I'm just going to finish here with this one, and then I'm going to put a little bit more streusel on top, and then a little bit more batter, and then that'll be it for this pan. And when you're working with cake batter using the baking soda and baking powder, after you've mixed it in the mixer, you can notice, or you will notice, that it starts to rise fairly quickly. So that's a good indication that your powders are working well and that they're still good. So again, just like that, and then just give it a little shake. And I'm going to just finish this off with a little bit more batter, and then I'm going to start on the cupcakes. Okay, so I have my loaf cake done here. I put 3 layers of batter and 3 layers of streusel. So the streusel on the top to finish it off with that last layer of batter. So now I'm going to get started on the cupcakes. So we'll just set that aside because I'm going to get them in the oven all at the same time. And for the cupcakes, I'm going to use a 1/4 cup measure and see how that works to fill these up. Now I might need a little bit of help here with a knife because this is so thick, but I think it'll be fine. Yeah, that's good. Doesn't have to be quite a 1/4 cup, just the best you can do. A 1/4 cup might be a little bit too much because this is going to rise quite a bit. And you do want to get a little bit more batter on top of this after you put some of that streusel in here. So I'm just going to get these filled up. And then once we're getting them in, I'll just show you here though. A little bit of streusel on your cupcakes, on the batter I should say. And then another addition of batter on top. Just, as best you can do. Just like that. And then you'll just put some more streusel on the top of this. And they're going to even out as they cook once this batter gets into the oven and starts to get in that temperature. Okay, so I'll see you shortly once we get these in. Okay, so I've got my batter into my cupcake molds here. And I did get 9 cupcakes out of the rest of the batter. So 1 loaf pan cake and 9 cupcakes. Or if you don't want to do the cupcakes, you can do 2 loaf pans or 1 bundt cake. But just make sure your pan is big because this will overflow. So I'm just finishing now by putting the last of the streusel on top of my cake batter here. And then I'm going to put this in the oven. And these are going to bake, I'm going to say about 45 minutes, and then I'm going to check them. Now cupcakes take a little less time than the actual cake will. And this batter is thick like a banana bread batter, so that's why it's going to take that amount of time because it is so thick. So I'll just get this finished up here, and then I'm going to put them in the oven at 350 for 45 minutes. I'm going to check them before that 45 minutes is done because I just don't want them to burn or overbake and be dry. And that can happen easily as well, whether every oven is different and bakes differently, whether it's a hot oven or cool with the moderate temperatures in our ovens. Most ovens today now though are better than they used to be years ago, and they keep a good temperature when you're baking. All right, so that looks great. I'm just going to spread this out just a little, and into the oven these are going to go. Great. So I'll start with my muffins, or my cupcakes I should call them, because they are going to be cupcakes. So I'll just get those ones in, and then I'll get my loaf cake here. Get that in the oven as well. So they're in at 350. I am going to set my timer for 45 minutes. I'll let you know the approximate or the real time that it does take to bake them. So I'll see you shortly. Okay, so my cupcakes and my cake are finished cooking. Now the cupcakes took 30 minutes to bake, and I did get 9 of them, which I could have probably made them a little smaller and gotten more. And my cake took an hour to bake as well. So now I'm going to make the light brown butter glaze for these, which is a 1/4 cup of butter in my pot, which I'm going to put on medium-low heat, and I'm going to let it melt and get nice and brown. And then I'm going to add in 2 cups of icing sugar, 1 to 3 tablespoons of milk as needed, so you'll just have to judge that, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get started. I'm going to get my butter going, and then once it starts to get brown, we're going to add in the sugar. So let me get that started here. And once this gets going a little bit more, then I'll be back to show you I'm adding in my icing sugar and other ingredients. And then we're just going to pour that on top of our cupcakes and our cake. Hi everyone. Okay, so I've got my butter here in my pot. Now, you want to keep an eye on this while the butter's melting because you don't want it to burn. And just swirl it around in the pot until it's nice and brown. Now this is almost done. And this took about 5 minutes on a medium to low heat, medium high, medium low, about a 5, half your temperature of your burner. So this is done now. So I'm going to take it off the heat, and you're going to be able to start to smell your butter getting done. It has a nice fragrant, flavorful smell. And as you can see here, it is nice and brown in the bottom of the pot there. So just swirl it around. You don't need to use a spoon to stir it or anything. Just keep an eye on it and keep moving it so it doesn't burn. So now I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and then I'll add in my sugar and then my milk. The milk you'll do last because you don't want it too runny. So the milk you'll add just a little bit at a time. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla, which is sizzling. And just give that a swirl around in the pot, and this will also give a nice caramel to the vanilla, or to your butter, a nice smell and taste. So just give that a swirl around, and now I'm going to take my icing sugar. I have 2 cups of icing sugar. That's just going to go right into this butter and vanilla mixture, and just give that a stir. Now this would be quite thick, this mixture here. And this is where you're going to be careful when you add in your milk, because if you add too much milk, your mixture here will be too runny. And if you don't add enough, it'll be too dry to drizzle over your cakes. So I'm just going to start by adding a little bit in there. That's maybe a tablespoon. I haven't measured. I have 3 tablespoons in my measuring cup here. And you just mix, and it will start to form a nice smooth paste. So that's 2 tablespoons in there. So we'll just get this mixed up here. And just keep mixing it. It'll come together and it'll form a nice glaze for you. And then once this is done, we're going to pour it over top of our cupcakes and our cake. And this is a very delicious glaze. It tastes very nice. So once I get this finished, I'll be back to show you us getting it poured over the glaze of the cupcakes and the texture of it. Okay, see you shortly. Okay, so I've got my glaze done here. And one other tip with this glaze, if it's too thick, add a little bit more milk. And if it's too thin to spread on your cakes, just add a little bit more sugar, a little bit at a time. Don't add too much at once. So this is about the texture you're going to want it. So as you can see, it runs off the spoon quite nicely. And we're just going to take the spoon and we're just going to drizzle it over our cakes here. So I'm going to start with my loaf cake, and just a little bit, just nice and easy. And you want it to go over the sides as well. So a little bit on your spoon. Don't feel like you got to have too much. And I did put wax paper under my wire rack here, just so it doesn't get all over the place. So just like that. And I'm going to do that with the cupcakes as well. And then we're going to try these delicious cakes. And I'm so looking forward to tasting these because I'm sure they're just going to be absolutely delicious. See you in a second. Okay, so I have my cupcakes and my cake glazed, and they look perfect and they smell absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to take one of the cupcakes here and show you how the crumb looks on them. And now these are a nice delicate crumb on this cupcake. Tastes very nice. So I do hope you'll give this recipe a try. So I'm just going to take off the cupcake liner here. And as you can see, it baked nicely. And these did bake for 30 minutes. So just keep an eye. Set your oven for 25 if you're going to do the cupcakes. And then just test them. If they need the extra time, give them that extra 5 minutes. Now the loaf cake did take an hour as well. So you just want to keep an eye on it, but it does need that time because it's so dense and thick. So I'm going to cut in here to this cupcake. Nice and soft and moist. Beautiful texture on it. And these taste delicious. And you'll see a little bit of the marbling in there from the streusel that we did put in there. So give it a try. I'm sure you're going to like it, as it is a very nice treat. Okay, thank you for watching my video. I hope you liked it, and I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Thank you.